Hey, folks. So, what we're going to do here is look at how popular literature and culture wars, honestly, culture wars of the 1920s, uh, but especially popular literature and this really big need for nostalgia in the lives of human beings and the way that we want to look back at the past positively, and especially how we want to look back at our own ancestors positively. And sometimes that gets kind of roped into literature, and sometimes it unfortunately gets into public policy and history and memory. So, before we go down that road, though, just get this out there. The Civil War, primarily the South seceded over the issue of slavery. I know here in the South, a lot of people like to throw out the South seceded over states' rights and kind of, that sort of mythology. That's not it. Really, the South was against states' rights when it did not benefit them. Now, what the heck am I talking about that? As far as fugitive slave laws go, northern states would sometimes pass laws meant to protect fugitive slaves within their state. Okay? Now, if the South was for states' rights, they should respect those laws. They should respect other states for saying, hey, we don't like this within our state. Well, no, the South fought against those laws. The South wanted the federal government, likes the federal government, the South wanted the federal government to clamp down and, hey, Pennsylvania, you're not allowed to pass such laws. We're going to push through an aspect of the Compromise of 1850 to not allow northern states to protect fugitive slaves. Southern states want their human property, and so they're really going to push against the freedom of other states to pass laws within their own borders. So, yeah, the South is for states' rights when it suits them, but not so much when it doesn't. Now, so now that that's out of the way, let's dig into this some more. Again, the South primarily seceded over the issue of slavery. Yes, there were other issues, there were other complicating factors, but without slavery, you don't have a civil war. So let's see what Alabama's governor in 1860 has to say about this sort of growing movement of anti-slavery and growing movement of abolition in the North. The Alabama governor is Governor A.B. Moore, and immediately after the election of Abraham Lincoln, Moore gives a speech to the Alabama legislature, and he says, quote, Lincoln is the head of the great sectional party calling itself Republican, a party whose leading object is the destruction of the institution of slavery as it exists in the slave-holding states. Whoa, wait a minute. He didn't say anything about states' rights there, did he? The most distinguished leaders in and out of Congress have publicly and boldly proclaimed this to be their intention and unalterable determination. Kind of my own words, if we submit, quote, to being governed by a party who entertains the most deadly hostility towards us and the institution of slavery, end quote, kind of some other stuff, we need to secede. So the governor of Alabama is speaking out to the state legislature that, hey, we are in this for slavery. We need to secede for slavery. The vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander Stephens, gives another speech, the cornerstone speech. He says, the Confederacy rests on the institution of slavery. The cornerstone, that's what I'm sorry. Rewind, backwards, delete stuff. The cornerstone of the Confederacy rests on the institution of slavery. We're just going to leave mistakes in because that's what I do. I'm lazy. So you've got these Southern politicians, Southern leaders, Vice President of the Confederacy, Governor of Alabama. Hey, we're seceding over slavery. As you see on the slide, The Confederate Constitution has several laws that explicitly protect the institution of slavery. So they're not really about this vague weirdness of states' rights, okay? Now that we've got that established, took a whole 5 minutes on that. Sorry. In 1910, we are going to have a movie that is going to come out. Yippee-yay-hoo. This movie is called Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation really, really highlights from Griffith's point of view and the original writer Thomas Dixon's point of view, highlights the heroic nature of the Klan. Now, big thing, this is the second incarnation of the Klan. We had the first incarnation of the Klan that emerges right after the Civil War, pretty much dies out. And then the second incarnation of the Klan is what we're going to talk about here. Well, Griffith puts out this movie, Birth of a Nation, and I'll put some notes in the description of this if you want to watch some clips of the movie. You're free to watch the whole movie. It's available on YouTube, but it's 2 hours and 55 minutes of love letter to the Klan. And if you want to subject yourself to that, I guess you can. But basically, it depicts a community where African Americans have gained the right to vote, and once they've gained the right to vote, they take charge of the state legislature. They pass a number of laws. Big laws that they pass are going to elevate the social status of African Americans. Some of the stuff that is highlighted in the movie, it's a silent movie, but they put the little text cards up. A couple of things that scare the crap out of the white population. White soldiers are required to salute African American officers when passing them in the street. So you have white soldiers being forced to pay respect to African American men. Another big thing that is in the movie, that is a big giant scene actually in the movie, is that they are going to legalize interracial marriage. And so the big fear in the movie that's depicted is that African American men will be able to marry white women. And the public sees this movie, and the NAACP is not just hanging out. They are going to publicly protest this movie. But that doesn't get a lot of attention, unfortunately. But the white American public really, really, sees this movie and they take it as fact. They look at this movie and they just think it's not literally a documentary, but they look at it and this is a depiction of what happened during the Reconstruction period, that the African American communities kind of rose up and had a bunch of social upheaval and stuff like that. And so this sparks the birth of the Second Klan. So a movie, literally 3-hour movie, sparks the emergence of the Second Klan. The Klan is depicted in the movie as this rescuing force that is putting right what the Civil War did to Southerners. And if you get to one thing, if you get to the very, very end of the movie, go to 3 hours and 11 minutes. It's actually over 3 hours. Sorry, I lied to you a second ago. At 3 hours and 11 minutes, there's this big celebration right before the credits of, that the Klan has been victorious and has, sort of oppressed the African American community. And, to really hammer the point home, there's this big celebration of what's happening. And literally 3 hours and 11 minutes and 15 seconds, I'm pretty sure it's what it says in my notes, Jesus appears. Like, seriously, an image of Jesus appears over these celebrations of the white community, celebrating the Klan and their actions and stuff. So the white public really jives on Birth of a Nation. It gives birth to the Second Klan, like I said. And a big thing, this was based on a novel. Lots and lots of movies based on novels. And you guys know this. And we always kind of, the movie's better than the novel or the book's better than the movie and all that kind of stuff and debates. But the original person that wrote the book that Birth of a Nation was based on was a guy named Thomas Dixon. And it's on the title card down there. Thomas Dixon wrote a book called The Klansman. Basically the same story. But here's the thing. Dixon's father in 1862 owned land and slaves valued at $100,000. So in 1862 dollars, I ran that through one of those inflation calculators, and in 2022, that's the equivalent of $3 million. So the writer of The Klansman, his dad was a major landholder and a major slaveholder. He fought for Dixon's dad fought for the Confederacy. Later on, he joined the Klan. And so, Dixon doesn't want to remember his dad sort of factually. Dixon wants to remember his dad nostalgically, that we don't want our parents, we don't want to look back and see our parents as the villains in our stories. We want to look back and see our parents as the heroes of our story. And I think Dixon does that in this novel. Think about this. Dixon's dad, again, fought for the Confederacy. Which one of these sounds better? Dad fought to preserve the institution of slavery and his legal ability to force labor, beat, and rape other human beings. That doesn't sound real good, right? But what if we rephrase that? Dad fought to preserve states' rights according to the United States Constitution. Well, preserving slavery sounds bad, but if we recapture that as Dad fought for states' rights, it has kind of a noble ring to it, right? Later on, after Dixon's father joins the Klan, which one sounds better? Dad was a Klansman. His buddies terrorized and sometimes murdered African Americans. Kind of sounds bad. Or what about this? What if we rephrase that? Dad was a Klansman and opposed the changing of our culture, and he worked to end the rule of the Republican Party down here in the South that was stripping away our freedoms. That second one, again, sounds better. And so Southerners are very much going to try to spin during this time period, 1910, 1920s, they're really going to try to spin the Civil War. What was this about? What are we fighting for down here in the South? Were we fighting to try to preserve the institution of slavery, or something more noble? Were we fighting for states' rights? The oppression by the federal government in, lording over our Southern institutions. What Southern institutions? Well, let's keep that vague. So after a little bit before the Klansman, actually, before the movie popularizes the Klan. The movie popularizes this whole event. But while that's going on, we have in 1894, we have the emergence of the United Daughters of the Confederacy. And a couple of years later, don't really have to worry about them, but we have in 1896 the emergence of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Early on, the Sons of Confederate Veterans actually just plays a supporting role to the UDC. The UDC is going to do a couple of positive things. They're going to raise money for veterans. They're going to raise money for widows. They're also going to raise money for cemeteries to bury, Confederate veterans and stuff like that once they have passed away. So those are kind of positive things, helping people out, stuff like that. They also, though, on the bad side of things, they are going to build monuments to the Confederacy in this sort of states' rights thing. Now, if they would have done this accurately and said, hey, we're, memorializing this great war, and we are acknowledging that they did fight, for primarily slavery, the institution of slavery. But they didn't do that. They're going to say, they fought for states' rights and the oppression of the federal government. They're also going to really, really work real hard in shaping textbooks, the textbooks that Southern schools will adopt. Um, so the big thing here is this is the creation of something called the Lost Cause. We're trying to memorialize the Civil War and the Confederate contributions to that. Again, saying that the South primarily seceded over the institution of slavery, bad look. States' rights, positive look. Some other stuff that the UDC is especially going to do in textbooks. This is, 1920s culture war kind of stuff. They are really going to push for the lines that enslaved people were happy. Some of that's a little bit of a repeat during prior to the Civil War. White Southerners are going to kind of try to claim that Southern enslaved people were happy and content with their lot. They're going to review textbooks and make sure that Southern kids only got the version of history that glorifies the Confederacy. So anything that says the war was about slavery, that's got to go. Anything that suggests that enslaved people were anything other than happy and content, that stuff's got to go. And one of the things that's really wild is that they're going to argue that it's the North's fault that Southerners had slaves anyway. The North does play a role as far as shipping and stuff like that, and the North does benefit from the institution of slavery as far as purchasing Southern products and stuff like that. So yeah, the North was very much complicit, but I wouldn't go as far as saying it's the North's fault that Southerners had slaves. That's just kind of strange. So they also will go after university professors. Any university professors that argue that the Civil War was about slavery, those people need to be fired according to the UDC, and they actually do run a couple of people off and they get a couple of people fired. Let's see, sorry, kind of pausing. Couple of things. That book down there, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. The book down there, No Alabama, one of the primary writers of that book is Frank Lawrence Owsley. And he is going to adopt that sort of lost cause line. No Alabama, that version that Civil War was about states' rights and the Klan was a positive influence, and that enslaved people were content with their lot. That book was used at least up until probably the 1970s in Alabama. And so we really don't get away from that for a long time. And that's probably why you still hear, in addition to not wanting to acknowledge that the war was about slavery, that's probably why you still hear a lot of people here in Alabama claim that, the war was about states' rights. That's what my textbook says. So anyway, another kind of a wild thing, like I said, the UDC put out a lot of the statues and stuff that are floating around down here in the South. A really, really super, super big one and very kind of one that gets a lot of public attention is Stone Mountain in Georgia. The top sort of right picture on this slide is the engraving of Stone Mountain, and it's got Confederate President Jefferson Davis, Confederate General Robert E. Lee, and Confederate General Stonewall Jackson riding all together. The original designer of Stone Mountain was the president of the Atlanta chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy. Her original vision of that engraving on the side of that granite mountain was, yes, let's have Davis and Lee and Jackson on there. She also wanted them to be flanked by Klansmen. So the UDC very much was kind of, let's mythologize the Confederacy, let's also mythologize the Klan as sort of this rescuing and heroic force. Um, and that's probably honestly why a lot of Southerners still incorrectly, claim that the war was about states' rights, because we have this movie, Birth of a Nation, that mythologizes this thing, and then we have the United Daughters of the Confederacy. And now the Sons of Confederate Veterans are playing more of a role, I think, than the UDC does, as far as promoting these imagery. And so, unfortunately, we've got some times where literature will influence history and try to override history in creating mythology. So that's where we're at. We'll talk to you later.